Our next session, we particularly invited them to talk about building an inclusive scholarly publishing workforce and to share some of the highlights of the Workplace Equity Survey. I'll start by introducing Paige. Paige Wooden is Director of Publications at the American Geophysical Union, AGU. She oversees the department budget management process, editor relations, department and enterprise data projects and strategy. She's held positions at AGU Publications for over 16 years. She has a degree from the University of Maryland, College Park. Yay, 2 of my kids have gone there. And a BA in English from University of California, Berkeley. And she's also an avid cyclist and runner and very involved in SSP. And Paige, I'll let you introduce your other panelists and go ahead.
Camille, were you going to take this one on first?
Yeah, happy to do that. Yeah.
Great.
Thank you, Dawn, for the intro to the intro. And thank you everyone for joining today. We're very honored and grateful to have been invited to present on this session today. We're looking forward to discussing the results of the Workplace Equity Survey with you all. My name is Camille Lemieux. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm a manager of Global Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion at Springer Nature. Today I'm joined by both Paige Wooden and Maribel Gomez, who's a Publishing Inventory Associate at Copyright Clearance Center. Today, the 3 of us are very excited to share findings from this Workplace Equity Survey, and we'll have time at the end for any questions that you have, but you're also welcome to put them in the chat and we'll try to catch them as we go. So just to get us started, I wanted to mention that we will be sharing some anonymous quotes from the survey of a wide range of experiences that people have had in the scholarly communications industry generally. And we ask that everyone just be respectful of differences of opinion and just talk about these difficult topics in a respectful manner. I also want to note that the results that you're seeing today are representative only of the survey respondents, and we'll talk about who responded to the survey generally, but we don't want to make any generalizations about the entire industry in terms of scholarly communications. We're just focusing on results from this survey, but they do speak to people's lived experiences across the globe, and we hope that some of the results will resonate with you or make you curious to learn more. So in terms of our agenda, I will share a brief overview of what this survey is and talk through some of the respondent demographics. And then Paige and Maribel will talk through the key themes that we found from this survey and do a deep dive into results specific to career opportunities in the industry, networking, and mentorship. Maribel will also share some insights and advice from her own career journey. Very excited for that. And we'll end with a discussion of some actions that we can all take to really progress workplace equity and inclusion. As a little history, for anyone who doesn't know, the Workplace Equity Survey is part of this Workplace Equity Project. And it started in 2018 as a grassroots effort led by Simone Taylor, Jerry Walker, and Susan Spilka. They joined together to develop and conduct a survey to capture people's lived experience of workplace culture in the scholarly communications industry. At the time, there were really no industry benchmarks with data, especially covering publishers, associations, libraries, and the very diverse mix of organizations in our global community. But in general, they kind of knew heuristically that there were more women than men in the industry, that men seemed to be more likely to be in leadership positions, and that the industry was majority white. But there wasn't a lot of real data at that time to reference. So thankfully, around that time, the Coalition for Diversity and Inclusion in Scholarly Communications, or C4DISC, was founded. So they partnered together and help to secure and help us run this survey as a more long-term project. So that brings us to today. So they ran the survey in 2018, and we saw some results from that that are really interesting. So we decided to run the survey again in 2023, and it launched last year at the Society for Scholarly Publishing's annual conference. Yeah, we're grateful to the many organizational partners who helped us increase outreach for this survey this year. So you'll see the number of responses on the slide there. We had about 1,700 responses to the survey that we'll talk through. And we hope to continue increasing the amount of people who take part in the survey in future and share their experiences so that we can get toward a more, even more representative survey. The full report is available online at c4dis.org, and we'll share a link to that report at the end of the session. So I will just briefly talk through some of the demographics from the survey respondents. So again, we heard from about 1,700 people. In terms of geographic distribution, 61% of respondents were based in North America, followed by 26% in Europe, and then 6% in both South America and Asia. And then lastly, both Africa and Oceania had around 1% representation across the sample. We were really happy to see more representation in South America compared to the 2018 survey, but again, we hope to further expand the global outreach in the future. In terms of gender identity and sexual orientation, 72% of respondents were women, 21% were men, and 4% identified as non-binary or gender diverse. And then 22% of the sample identified as part of the LGBTQ+ community. When we look at respondents' self-identified race and ethnicity, 72% were white, followed by 12% Asian. Black and Latina groups were at 4% each, multiracial at 3%, and then around 1% for Indigenous and Pacific Islander. And then lastly, since we'll be discussing some experiences specific to disability status, neurodiversity, age, and career levels, we just wanted to share these demographics as well. So across our sample, 11% of respondents were neurodivergent, 8% had one or more disabilities, and 4% identified as both neurodivergent and disabled. In terms of age groups, the majority of our sample were between the ages of 25 and 54, though around 18% were 55 or older. And finally, when we look at the self-identified career levels of respondents, around 41% identified as mid-career, 26% as intermediate, and 22% as senior or executive level. But we also had 10% in entry level, which we'll talk about too. And now I'll turn it over to Paige just to talk through some of the key themes from the 2023 survey overall.
So for the key themes, we this was something that we highlighted in our executive summary, which can be found on the C4DIS website. So in our executive summary published in May, we highlighted 4 key themes. One of those is that supportive organizational culture and employer commitments to diversity have increased since the 2018 survey. So since 2018, more organizations have communicated their values about diversity. In 2018, 60% of survey respondents reported that organizations have stated values about diversity, and we can see that this figure increased to 89% in 2023 survey. Respondents reporting that their organization's culture is supportive increased by 20%. Not shown is that 78% of respondents said they are satisfied with their current position, which is an increase from the 2018 survey, where only 34% agreed or strongly agreed that they were satisfied with their position, with 17% responding neutral. So not everyone experiences tangible improvements in workplace culture. We saw that some demographics did reported lower rates of satisfaction compared to the overall average. So for example, 71% of neurodivergent individuals reported their workplace culture was supportive compared to 81% overall. So that's slightly lower than the average. Well, 10%, which is maybe it's a lot lower, depending on how you see it. And even lower still is that 63% of Black individuals reported their workplace culture was supportive. Again, compare that to the 81% overall. 72% of non-binary respondents reported their workplace culture was supportive. And then there were negligible differences among men and women, age groups, and career level, which are the 3 demographic slices that we're going to focus on later in the presentation. So the third theme was in the report that we suggest the key focus areas for improving equity should be mentorship, networking, promotional structures and opportunities, and supporting employees returning from career breaks. And then the fourth theme that we highlight is that the future of workplace equity requires organizational and personal accountability. And in the report, we provided ways to increase workplace equity, both at an individual contributor level and at a leadership level. And we're going to review some of those towards the end of this presentation. So I'm going to go into a deep dive into I'm going to go into deep dive into career opportunities, and then Maribel will go into deep dive into a couple others. And we chose these because we thought they were of interest to students and early career and those later in their careers and in positions of leadership and positions of influence, which we thought might represent the audience here today. These are the questions that we asked. There's a lot of them under career opportunities, and we focus on a few of them for each slide. I take initiative to identify job opportunities. I pursue job opportunities that are presented to me. I pursue job opportunities even when I do not fulfill all of the requirements. I find that job opportunities I pursue don't come to fruition, and I let my manager know what I want with the expectation that it will generate growth opportunities. So the responses of a couple of those questions we show by gender. So for the question, I pursue job opportunities, even if I do not fulfill all of the requirements on a job description, women are less likely to pursue a job opportunity when they don't fulfill all the requirements compared to non-binary and men. But the other question shows that men are less likely to find that job opportunities they pursue come to fruition. So maybe we can put this out in the chat. We can talk about it among the panelists later. But why do we think this might be the case? Is it that some women don't want to take the risk to apply for positions that they're worried they're not qualified for? Or perhaps women apply for fewer jobs in general over the course of their career. So when they do they focus on job positions where they fit all of the requirements? And then with men, and then men are reporting less often that job opportunities they pursue come to fruition. Maybe they're applying for too many that they're not qualified for. But I think it's interesting that we know the publishing industry is a female dominated majority field industry. So what effect would these responses have on increasing male representation in our industry? So this is by age group to a few of the questions. I take initiative to identify new job opportunities. And we see here that the younger age groups tend to take initiative to identify new opportunities, pursue opportunities presented to them, and pursue job opportunities when they do not fulfill all the requirements. Note, though, that the youngest age group, which was our smallest age group, 16 to 24-year-olds are the least likely or less likely than 25 to 34, and the least likely in some of these responses to take initiative and pursue opportunities presented to them, and when they do not fulfill all the requirements. But as we can see, as the age groups increase after 35, respondents were less likely to pursue new job opportunities, maybe because they are either content with their position or there aren't as many more advanced positions for them to pursue. Throw that out to the chat. We have some free response, but obviously we don't know the reason, looking at the data, why this might be the case. So we just have to be sensitive to the reasons and provide opportunities to people of all age groups. So one of the quotes we have that was applicable is, "I'm over 55. Guess how hard it is to get a new job. Ageism is a kind of inequity too. Maybe not as destructively systemic, but it's pretty rough," said a US respondent, obviously over 55. So this makes me think how we can better support those interested in growing their careers at later stages in their life. I know a lot of times when we talk about career development, we're thinking about younger people, but how can we also make sure that we're including people in other age groups as well? So I want to focus right now on our discussion on the two questions. The third one, I pursue job opportunities even if I do not fulfill all of the requirements. And I find that job opportunities I pursue come to fruition, which we looked at with gender as well. Here we look at responses by career level, entry, intermediate, mid, and senior and executive. And the lower career levels report being more likely to pursue job opportunities, even if they do not fill all the requirements of a job description, while the higher career levels report being less likely. So those in more senior positions report more often that job opportunities they pursue come to fruition. In other words, those in entry and intermediate levels are more likely to take risks when applying for positions, but perhaps those risks don't always help them land that job. This is a comment from an entry level respondent, and I would love to hear people's perspectives on how we could be more supportive of salary negotiations. When I was hired, I felt like I couldn't negotiate my salary at all, partially because it was the first time I was being offered a real salary after working part-time in retail. I've spoken with many early career workers at my job, and they had a similar feeling and experience. I believe that the young people hired to this industry are somewhat taken advantage of. Maybe it's the same for most industries, though. But do we want the publishing industry to be like most industries? No, we want the publishing industry to be the best industry. So I would love to hear people's perspectives on how we can be supportive of those that we mentor or manage to help them develop skills that that help in negotiation or justifying promotions and pay raises. Maybe it's not just negotiation. Maybe it's working with them to be honest about what they have to do with their skills to be competitive at a negotiation discussion. Now I'm going to hand it over to Maribel.
Yes, hi everyone. So yes, I'll be covering networking. And here we'll examine how interest in networking varies across different age groups, genders, and career stages, from early career professionals to senior executives. This will help us understand how networking preferences evolve and what approaches are most effective for each group. And these are the questions about networking on the survey. So networking at in-person conferences, networking at virtual conferences, and participating in employee resource groups, and socializing with peers within my company, socializing with peers outside of my company, and the use of social media. So in here, we're gonna explore the networking opportunities by gender. And we can see here that men and women responded similarly to networking methods, and non-binary individuals reported higher rates of attending virtual conferences, networking with peers in company, and through employee resource groups. And interestingly, when we look at the data, men and women responded similarly in terms of the networking methods used. However, non-binary individuals reported higher rates of attending virtual conferences, networking with their peers within their company, and participating in employee resource groups. This suggests that the virtual and internal networking platforms, along with the support of ERGs, are particularly important for creating inclusive opportunities for engagement and career development. And here we're going to explore by age, and we found that younger respondents were less likely to network at in-person conferences and less likely to network with peers outside their workplace than older age groups. The youngest age groups were more likely to network with peers, and networking with peers decreased as the age group increased. So for those over 65, they reported the highest rates of networking at virtual conferences and lowest rates of networking with coworkers and through social media. With the exception of those of 65 and older, all age groups reported similar rates of networking through social media. And to highlight some of the challenges that early career professionals face when it comes to networking, I wanted to share a quote from a junior staff member at a press. So junior staff at our press are not allowed to attend conferences. So any networking we do must be done through online meetings and or with our peers during free time outside of the office. And this quote underscores that for some, access to traditional networking opportunities like conferences can be limited, making alternative methods like virtual meetings and peer connections essential for career growth. And here we're exploring by career level. We can observe that entry-level individuals rely most on socializing with peers at their organizations for networking, while senior and executive level individuals rely on in-person conferences and networking with peers outside of the company. We can ask, does a senior or executive position necessitate senior executives to network at in-person conferences, or is networking at in-person conferences necessary to achieve a higher leadership position within the organization? Entry-level and senior executive level are less likely than intermediate and mid-level individuals to participate in employee resource groups. So as we ponder about the different networking methods, while virtual meetings and social media have their advantages, they cannot fully replace the in-depth in-person interactions as shared by one of the respondents, saying, in-person networking is so important, especially for those of us averse to using social media. One does not replace the other, merely supplement it, though the obvious benefits of social media being more accessible than, say, in conference meetings is very important too. That said, I feel with peers and colleagues I have got to know only through Zoom or virtual meetings. It's just not the same in terms of learning from colleagues, developing a supportive or encouraging relationship, or just getting to know someone at a personal level. And here, after discussing networking and its role in building professional connections, it's important to mention that these relationships can serve as the foundation for mentorship. While networking expands your circle, mentorship is about personal growth and long-term career development with the guidance of someone more experienced. And we will review the results from the mentorship questions. Here, do you currently or have you ever had a mentor, sponsor, coach, or other advisor who helped you navigate your career? Did they support measurably impact your career, or have you ever served in the workplace as a mentor, sponsor, coach, or other advisor? And here we see by gender again, when comparing these three groups, women reported the highest rates of having had a mentor, but indicated less often than men that the mentorship had a measurable impact on their career. Non-binary individuals are least likely to report having served as a mentor. Men report the highest rates of mentorship having a measurable impact on their career. And here by age, the findings highlight that younger people are most likely to have had a mentor and least likely to have served as a mentor. Conversely, older age groups are less likely to indicate they have a mentor, but are most likely to indicate they have served as a mentor. However, the older age groups are more likely than younger age groups to report that mentorship had or has a measurable impact on their careers. The younger age groups also have the lowest rating for the usefulness of mentorship, with fewer than 50% indicating that mentorship had a measurable impact on their careers. And maybe this might be due to lack of work experience, as it takes years to move up roles. In other words, younger age groups don't see the benefit of mentorship as much as later age groups do. And here we're going to observe by career level. So senior executives reported the highest rates of having a mentor and serving as a mentor. This graph suggests there is a relationship between mentorship and achieving the highest positions within the organization. Senior and executives also report the highest rates of mentorship benefiting their career. And these set of quotes highlight personal experiences that emphasize the critical role of mentorship in professional growth and the value of mutual learning between early and late career professionals. And here are some of the quotes. I think having an advocate and a mentor is extremely valuable for professional development and career management, especially for women and people of color in this industry. This activity has to be part of a structured program to be truly useful. And another person, I think that later career professionals should recognize that they have as much to learn as to teach if paired with earlier career colleagues. And just started the mentorship, but I believe it will help me a lot in my professional and personal growth. And right here, this quote highlights the importance of mentorship in breaking down barriers for individuals from underrepresented backgrounds, emphasizing the need for insider guidance to access industries like scholarly publishing and the responsibility of professionals to extend that support. So I believe that mentorship is critical for those of us that come from working class and non-white backgrounds like myself to gain access to work in scholarly publishing. It became clear to me throughout college, including during my internship with a scholarly publisher, that certain career paths require insider knowledge and guidance that I simply did not have. You don't know how to pursue something you know nothing about. I think it is the responsibility of those within the industry to branch outward and provide support to those outside of it. And I will be sharing my personal journey transitioning from education to the publishing industry, a path that involved navigating challenges and leveraging mentorship and networking opportunities. So attending the 2023 SSP, or actually the conference this year, was a turning point in my career. During my final year in the Professional Studies in Publishing program at George Washington University, I was navigating a career change from education to publishing. I applied to over 200 jobs during my last year. And although I didn't always meet every requirement, I learned the importance of leveraging transferable skills and applying anyway. You never know what opportunities might arise. And as a woman of color, I knew it would be challenging to break into the publishing industry, especially while finishing my final year at George Washington University. The 2023 Lee and Low Baseline Survey reported that 72.3% of U.S. publishing, review, journal, and literary agency staffers are white, compared to only 4.6% who are Hispanic. Despite this, I refuse to let it deter me. I continue to apply for positions, seek advice from my professors, and engage with others in the industry. And transitioning from education, where I had developed strong communication and organizational skills, taught me that these strengths shouldn't be underestimated in the publishing industry. And with the guidance of my professor, he may be here actually, Randy Townsend, I applied for an internship at AGU and for the SSP fellowship program. I was accepted into both, not knowing just how impactful they would be for my career. At AGU, from December of 2022 to 2023, I learned the intricacies of the journal's pipeline, from checking for plagiarism and ensuring the accuracy of article submissions to maintaining communication with authors. These experiences deepened my understanding of the publishing process. And attending the SSP meeting in Boston as a fellowship winner this past May was an incredible experience. I had the opportunity to present my research on promoting diversity, equity, and inclusion in open access insights in Latin America, which allowed me to explore key issues related to inclusivity in publishing. Meeting mentors like Randy Townsend and John Warren was a highlight, as their support has been invaluable throughout my graduate studies. I also connected with my colleagues from CCC, Copyright Clearance Center, and expanded my network within the scholarly publishing community, which further enriched my professional growth and commitment to advancing DEI in the field. While serving on the SSP annual committee, I met Erin Foley, who is one of the co-chairs in the annual meeting committee. I noticed she worked in copyright and licensing, a field I was eager to explore. I reached out to her with questions about her career, and she graciously offered to help me with my resume. In a stroke of luck, Erin had just been promoted to a director role and was looking to hire for her team. Shortly after, I received a job offer from Copyright Clearance Center, further solidifying my transition into publishing. At CCC, employees are encouraged to stay involved with industry committees to keep up with trends. I remain active in both SSP and STM, where I'm part of the Early Career Publishers Committee, DEI Committee, and the Scholarly Kitchen Committee. STM has also been invaluable for networking and collaborating with industry leaders, which has accelerated my professional growth. And if you're considering a career transition or are unsure about applying because you don't meet all the qualifications, my advice is to go for it. Your transferable skills are more valuable than you think, and you never know what doors might open. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions about SSP or STM. I'd be more than happy to help. And thank you.
Thank you so much, Maribel, for sharing your journey. Very helpful to hear. And yeah, it seems like a lot of people are praising you in the chat, so as they should. It's very good. I will just briefly talk about some kind of action items we can all take away from this survey, and then we'll open it up for discussion. I already see we have some questions in the Q&A, so please keep putting questions in there if you have them as we go. We can't talk about every action item that people and organizations can take to advance diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility, but we'll have a starting point here and would love to talk more after the or at the Q&A and beyond. So first, just wanted to pull out a few action items that we can do as individuals. So how do we show up as an advocate, as an ally to our colleagues? So one thing we've pointed out already is supporting peers in their early career or people doing that career pivot. We can support them through formal or informal mentorship, networking, being a friendly face that they can go to, etc. We've talked a little bit about the benefit of mentorship programs, including reverse mentorship programs, and are happy to talk more about that. But I think just showing up for people in a personal way is very helpful. Another thing is contributing to employee resource groups. If you have access to any ERGs, these groups are in need of people who are not necessarily community members, but who want to learn from the community and support them in their work. I think, yeah, we can all do more to be involved, and I think that would be appreciated. And then last part is leveling up our kind of everyday allyship actions. So I've linked, or you can visit the C4DISC website to find a bunch of really incredible toolkits for embedding diversity, equity, inclusion, and accessibility in your organization, in your personal life or your professional life, and within various stages of publishing specifically. So please definitely check out those toolkits. They're really fantastic and full of evidence-based actions to take. I also want to talk briefly about career progression actions. I think in general, people are in early or mid-career. I think making sure that you're taking time and being proactive about asking about potential career paths you might take, whether that's through lateral movements or just growing your skills within the job you have, or advancing to a more senior position. I think all of those are great and just depend on what your personal ambition is. And I think just talking with managers about how we can best align our day-to-day work with the skills that we really need for that position that we want or that project that we want to attain at some point can be really valuable, just having those conversations. And so similarly, for people managers, we recommend that they also reach out to people that they manage to discuss their career pathways and on-the-job growth opportunities, in addition to providing access to out of the job, networking opportunities like conferences, workshops, trainings, etc. And definitely just showing interest in people's career plans in general is such a huge benefit. Just to ask, what do you want to do in 5 years? Where do you see yourself? How can I help you get there? Is just makes a world of difference versus not asking that explicitly. In terms of networking, we definitely would encourage and hope to see more organizations expanding networking opportunities to early career employees as part of professional development activities. I think this conference is a fantastic example of how to do that in an accessible and inclusive way. So we hope to see more being done and to support this. And then we also recommend just getting involved in volunteer opportunities. Similarly to what Maribel has shared, there's so much that you can get involved in, and there's so much growth that happens in a lot of these volunteer roles because you get to take on projects that you might not work on day to day and just grow very different skills than you might in your day-to-day job. And you meet great people, which is maybe the best part. And then in conference environments, we hope to see more in-person events with spaces that can meet a variety of sensory and mobility needs. For example, having quiet rooms or other quiet spaces to go if people need a break from the crowds and lots of people. Can also consider asking people you want to connect with to lunch or to just have a chat somewhere to learn more about their career path. That's something that has really helped my early career, just asking people to spend 15 minutes to tell me what they do and what advice they had. Just made a big difference in terms of seeing where I could go. Okay, and then for mentorship suggestions, so these are suggestions actually from previous audiences that we've talked to about these results. We've had a lot of conversations about focusing on mental health more proactively, being more intentional about how many spoons we have, just being in tune with how we're feeling and how to better support our health generally. Having frequent career conversations again was something that's brought up a lot. Some people brought up reverse mentorship programs and how they benefit. But in general, mentorship, I think, is good in terms of both the mentor and mentee learning from each other. And then providing some kind of personal surveys or doing some kind of personal goal setting related to both DEI competencies and just in general, like the strengths that you want to grow or that your mentor or mentee wants to grow. Okay, that's it in terms of some of the action things, examples that we want to share today. We're also happy to talk more generally about organizational level actions that are in the report, but we want to focus on some of the personal ones for this audience. In terms of next steps, so our contact information is listed on this slide. And please, if you're interested in digging deeper into the findings that we've shared today and other findings, please go to c4dis.org to check out the executive summary of the results. And we'll now open up the conversation to you all for Q&A. So please do continue to share any questions in the Q&A section, and yeah, looking forward to being in conversation with you all. I'll also put a link to the survey in the chat right now.
And for all those data nerds out there, we put our data, open data online. We don't include some of the more sensitive information, like the comments can reveal people's identities, and there's a couple other responses, but most of the data from the survey is posted as well, and you can get that through the executive summary.
I just wanted to thank you for such a comprehensive conversation on this. John and I always want to include the Sea Artist team every year in this meeting so that we can learn what you're learning. We can uncover some of the trends. And collectively as a community, there's a lot of folks. This has been a really active chat during your conversation, which is also really indicative of everyone's investment in creating pathways to improve this, whether through formal programs, reimagining how we engage in mentorship programs, and just sort of being better colleagues on a really basic level can be extremely impactful. So thank you for sharing it. I just wanted to do a little bit of the Q&A from our conversation here. So we did get 2 specific questions. One concerning methodology from Corey Parker, who's actually my colleague at APA, asking how were the 2 middle career levels defined? And so do you have any numbers, or how was that kind of defined within the scope of your survey?
So those 2 were just written as they were in the survey. We just asked people to kind of self-identify into these categories. So I'm sure if we looked at like tenure, they might fall into there might be a little some overlap there, but in general, people just self-identified as intermediate or mid-level. Thank you for that question.
And here's our next question. This is from Ann Stone, so someone I know you guys are familiar with. For those considering going into scholarly publishing, what conversations might be good to have during the interviews about the organizational approach to creating, and I would add to Ann's comment, maintaining an inclusive workplace culture? So this is both for the candidate and the interviewer, since I think folks from both sides of that conversation are participating in this here today.
I have a thought about that, but I'll open it up for everyone else too. And I do want to give Anne a shout out. I don't know if we did. I'll admit that Camille and Anne probably did the most work on the survey and the marketing and the writing of the report. So kudos to them. And then Simone, who spoke yesterday, has been a great leader as well, in overseeing our efforts. But so my thought for the interview of equity, diversity at the workplace, and I think it's an important question that we should, that most organizations, if possible, should normalize within the interview process. For the person doing the being interviewed, most of the time they're going to be a sharp applicant will have done their research about the organization. And I think that a lot of times we'll look at the values of the organization that we're applying for. And hopefully those values will have some sort of equity and diversity component to them. And if they do, I think that the person being interviewed should ask the organization, and this actually should be done by all of us when we have when we have important conversations with the higher ups in our company, HR. Ask them what you state these in your values. I think that's great. But what activities and programs demonstrate your commitment to these values? Because in our survey, we did see a discrepancy between the stated values and then actually living up to those values. As we know, we saw a lot of companies coming out with statements after the murder of George Floyd and Black Lives Matter 2020. But then they came out with a lot of statements that were committed to equality, diversity, inclusion. But then after that, we don't know how they demonstrated those within their programs and how they sewed that into their how they did business. So that's one thing is continuing to ask those questions of the higher ups in your organization. And then the other side, doing the same thing with those people that you're interviewing, reaffirming your stated values and asking them how their lives, how their work has demonstrated commitment to these values.
Absolutely wonderful. Thank you, Paige. Sorry, I wanted to turn off my camera so that we could really focus the conversation on you guys and not me vigorously nodding my head. There's been a lot of that. I do encourage those of you, if you haven't looked at the chat, there's been an outpouring of resources and links and programs and people that you can connect with, and a lot of LinkedIn profiles. And so, as John mentioned earlier, one of our goals in this conference and making it free and making it hybrid is to really create space where we can engage. And I know that Zoom is not the same as in person, but we're trying to kind of redefine what we can do in these Zoom spaces. And so the chat has been a really inspiring place, especially during your presentation, to gather resources, and it's all going to be part of this recording. So at any point, if you wanted to go back, there's a lot of really great stuff there. So I just want to thank the four of you and everyone involved in your work and in the research and in mining all of that data so that you can present it to all of us here today. We didn't have any further questions on the formal Q&A, though there is a lot of discussion in the chat. John,
Can I interrupt real quick?
Oh, yeah, please.
I will say that we can ask these questions of people who are sitting on a panel, but we can also ask these questions of each other. And we're trying to encourage that when some of our presentations at SSP, we are asking the audience members, how can we change these stats for the next survey for the better? What can we do as individual contributors? What can we do as leaders? What can you do tomorrow? So a lot of these questions, or, what kind of resources can you read that are online? A lot of these questions have a lot of interesting, good answers that are applied to the individual, applied to different organizations. But I think the most important thing is asking each other and doing the work to support those answers.
Amen to that. We've got one final comment from Anne coming through our Q&A line saying, what activities and programs have you got in place for the organization to live those values? We saw so many presentations yesterday of great work about how they do the work in their job to impact representation within publications doing the work, but also at an organizational level, at a personnel level. Are those initiatives really being investigated and measured on an ongoing basis? And how do we measure efficacy? And is it changing, the skin tone of the people in the room, or is it giving them the tools to be successful in their careers and to feel supported in a really meaningful long-term way? And then creating pathways and workflows where that can continue, and having sort of a pipeline to really develop excellence in the field across all kinds of people with all different backgrounds. And so a lot of work has been done, a lot of work to be done. This is going to be an ongoing, lifelong endeavor, I think, for all of us committed to the cause. I really commend you guys on sharing this. And John, I'll turn it over to you if you wanted to bring anything else into this discussion before our next panel.
We have a couple minutes. There was a lot of great chat in this session and really wonderful presentation. I knew this would be good, so and you delivered, all of you. But there was some good talk about salaries, and this is something I do bring up, from time to time in courses and in our career builders. We probably could do a career builder on this, but salaries in terms of negotiating, beginning, when you're joining a company, but then I think also the same thing about asking for raises and promotions. So this could be a whole topic of its own, but do you have anything you want to add about that? I mean, not to put anybody on the spot, but like Maribel, you just recently got a job. Like, I mean, I think my sense is that employers appreciate it if you negotiate. You don't want to overdo it. That's what I would say. But I have had times where I'm hiring people and they ask for 100% more than what you said the job was going to be. That doesn't work. But maybe 10%. I don't know. Do you have anything to add, Maribel, or any of you about that?
Yeah, I mean, when I got hired in May, and when we were going through the paperwork process, they gave me a range, from, middle, they're like, what do you feel comfortable with? And I'm like, well, I do bring my transferable skills. I'm like, I've been an educator for 10 years, and I feel like I do have a lot of value with that. So I did negotiate, and I met them in the middle. I didn't ask for way too much. I knew what I wanted to ask for, and we both felt comfortable with that. So yeah, you just have to be confident and comfortable with your skills and what you bring to the table.
Yeah, good. Thanks. Anybody else? I would just again say, don't be afraid of negotiating. It all depends on context. I mentioned that, and there are some cases where jobs are not flexible, and they might be stated like this is like state jobs, for example, or federal jobs. They're not really flexible, but you know, usually I think you could ask. And this, Paige, you mentioned doing research on companies. That's good. Sometimes you could see stuff like that on things like Glassdoor. I don't know how reliable it is, but I think it's always good to negotiate. And there are definitely surveys or studies that do show that women candidates, and possibly BIPOC, I haven't seen that, but that women candidates are less likely to ask for a higher salary. So I think it's just something that you should think about doing. Better at the beginning than later. But anybody else have anything else they want to add to that?
Yeah, I think it can be a sensitive topic to navigate that at your own workplace. Like, you know, a lot of times you end up, the times you end up talking about it over drinks, you know, after work, and maybe also using mentors outside of your own organization to get ideas and pep talks, I guess, if you're going to go into for salary negotiations. So I understand that it can be a sensitive topic for discussing with your manager or colleagues as is when you're just kind of inquiring about it. If you're already there at an organization. And then, yeah, I mean, we have great resources with our various SSP and other ISMTE, other organizations, that those people are great kind of people to ask before going into a job about salary negotiations.
So let's see, Randy asked the question here. How can we use some of these more personal, granular approaches to increase participation and representation when so many DEIA programs are being threatened?
Yeah, that's a great question, Randy. I think that first, when we look at globally, is DEIA being threatened everywhere? I think thankfully, like the majority of organizations are doing more than they were a year ago or 5 years ago. I think the ones that have decided that they're not actually committed to this work have been called out on it quite publicly. And I think as individuals, we should continue advocating for this work and calling it out, holding leaders accountable to aligning their actions with what they say their values are. I do think that by continuing to advocate through, you know, employee resource groups, through our departments or leaders or whoever, for us to continue this is very important, and tends to get a decent response, but I think it depends on the company as well. I don't know if anyone else has other thoughts there.
One of the things you've mentioned in your presentation, you know, was taking action yourself, and, you know, for early career people, anybody early career, mid-career, or later career for that matter, you know, I think being strategic about your career and thinking about what your career goals are. And just one thing I mentioned is that as people do a strategic plan for a company, you know, think of your own career strategically, have some goals and objectives for your career, and write them down. You know, what do you want to do in the future? What do you want to do this year? You know, learning new skills like video editing or accessibility. I mentioned accessibility because we're doing a career builder on that. So like that's something you could learn about if you don't know, and add that to your portfolio. There's no end of new things you could learn, which is one of the great things, I think.
Yeah,
Well,
and I'm gonna jump in on that one too.
yeah.
And I don't know if I showed the graph, but people who are later in the career and older age groups are reported less likely to discuss their career goals with their manager. And you know, it could be like it's not applicable, but I do want to emphasize that even if you're later on in your career, you can, and maybe it's also that people who are later on in the career have more confidence to do what they want to do without getting permission from their manager, and they could be involved in other organizations outside, you know, volunteer organizations without permission or having to review it with their manager. So maybe it's that, but I do want to emphasize that we can either take a page from that playbook as earlier career individuals that I think that early career individuals could have more confidence in developing their skills on the side, developing a career plan that doesn't necessarily need to be checked off by their manager. The career plan transcends the current organization you're at, and it's your own skills, and sometimes you can align those with your actual work, but sometimes it's developing those skills outside of your day job. And then also on the flip side, for later career individuals to continue to have discussions when necessary with your peers and those above you and those other senior leaders at your organization, because don't necessarily stop having career goals when you reach a certain level.
That's such a great point. Not in publishing, but one of my friends here in the neighborhood just got laid off recently at 65, and it kind of took him by surprise. And he's exactly what you said. Like, I haven't been like, thinking of this or thinking of my career goals, and now like I'm not really ready to. I think people should always, I'll close with this, people should always have their resume ready. Always have your resume ready. Don't let it sit there for the years, and always be learning. So, come to conferences like this. Well, thank you all for such a great presentation. As I said, I knew it would be great. You are all wonderful. And thanks, Anne was the one that actually submitted this, and you did give her a call out earlier, but worth mentioning again. Camille, Paige, Maribel, great to see you all. And
Thank you.
thanks for sharing.